Hey guys, Bret here, and here is why you should extend your existing home instead of moving into a new one. The average person will throw away £92,000 in their lifetime moving house. That's £92,000 on tax, legal fees, land registry, and movers that they will never get back. And that is because the average person moves house 8 times within their lifetime, with the following expenses every time you move house. So when buying then, you've got your mortgage fees, which are usually around £1,000. You've also got your survey cost of £500. You've got your solicitor fees, which vary. They can be anywhere between £1,000 and £2,000. You've also got stamp duty, which on average is around £4,600. Removal costs between £500 and £1,000, and then any other costs such as the land registry fees, which could be up to £500 as well. And that's just when actually buying the new property. So because you're moving and you're selling your other property, there are other costs as well. And these are around £300 for a valuation fee for the estate agent, as well as the estate agent's commission, which average around £3,000. What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is my third video in a series of property guides that I'm going to be sharing on here over the next couple of weeks. If you're into these sorts of videos, then definitely check out my other videos as well and subscribe to the channel. And if you can, give this video a like so that I know to keep creating more similar content in the future. Now, if you know anybody that's thinking of moving house to a larger house in the next couple of years, then please share this video with them. Because in this video, I'm going to be looking at why building an extension is better than moving, permitted development versus full planning permission, as well as the types of extensions that you can build, the cost of building these extensions, and the financial impact that building an extension will have on the value of your property. If you want to skip straight to any of the main points that I'm going to cover in this video, then I've timestamped them down in the description, so feel free to go and jump ahead. Over 160,000 people moved home in the UK in 2009 alone, and the median distance covered was 9 miles, whilst almost 40%, which is 64,000 people, only moved within a 5-mile radius of their old property. This shows that a huge percentage of people are not moving for relocation reasons, but more than likely due to needing a bigger house with more space because maybe the size of their family is growing. That's a staggering amount of people who are throwing away a ton of money to not move very far. Although the amount of people don't make a difference to the point that I'm trying to make in this video, because all you need to worry about is your own house, your own property investment. But I just thought I'd share the numbers with you to highlight how staggering the facts are. So then, why is building an extension better than moving house? The way I see it, building an extension is better because you can improve the size and comfort of your home whilst at the same time increasing its value. All of this instead of paying the fees previously mentioned to get the same result in a different house. And sure, moving home might be an exciting thing to do, whilst building an extension can be disruptive to your household during the works. But on this channel, I'm all about maximizing savings whilst growing investments. So I'd much rather miss out on that temporary excitement of moving to a new house and instead work towards building my wealth. And if you thought the reasoning behind this video was going to be anything other than that, then please go and watch some of my other videos. So, having said that, other reasons to extend include being able to build a brand new space exactly how you want it. And if you're into DIY or construction, then it's probably going to be a fun project for you as well. And lastly, the current housing market is extremely unstable, with coronavirus, Brexit, and even the US politics all playing a part. House prices are at a 4-year high, and if I was to guess, I'd say that we're heading for a crash. Okay, now, in order to do any structural work to your existing property, you are normally required to get permission from your local authority, known as planning permission. But there's also another way that will save you a lot of hassle, and it's called permitted development. If you haven't heard of permitted development and you're thinking about extending your house, you are going to love it. Permitted development is when you're able to carry out certain building works without having to get full planning permission from your local authority. Limitations to these rights are pretty clearly defined, so it's easy to know where you stand in most cases. If you stick within the guidelines, you should be able to proceed with building works to your property relatively easily. Now, the whole point of the government putting in these restrictions on what we can actually build is to, one, protect the environment and ensure that large greenbelt areas don't get swallowed up by the cities, as well as to protect our heritage, which is why we have listed buildings, and to protect our neighbours as well, by not allowing new buildings to affect their privacy and their access to natural light. I'm going to talk about the costs and best processes of getting permitted development later in this video. But first, I'm going to talk about the scope of what you can actually do within it so that you can determine whether the works that you're thinking about doing fall within permitted development. Here's what you can do within your permitted development rights. And note that this is only for houses, it's not for flats or apartments. I'm going to split this into 4 sections because that's how it's done on the planning portal. And these 4 sections are permitted development for any extension, permitted development specifically for side extensions, permitted development for single-story extensions, and then for more than 1 story as well. So, for all permitted development extensions, the following conditions apply. Number 1, only half of the land or garden around the existing house can be built on. Number 2, the extension cannot be higher than the highest point of your existing house. If your planned extension is within 2 meters of your property's boundary, then it can't extend 3 meters in height. And extensions cannot be built on the front of your house under permitted development, as well as any external materials that are used on your extension must match the appearance of the existing building. Specifically for side extensions, these following further conditions apply. Number 1, they cannot exceed 4 meters in height. Number 2, it can only be single story. And number 3, you can only be up to half the width of the original house. For any single story extension under your permitted development rights, you cannot exceed more than 4 meters beyond the existing rear wall of the property if it's a detached house, and 3 meters if it's any other type of house like a semi-D or a terrace. Also, you cannot exceed 4 meters in height unless you submit a prior approval application, and this may allow you to then build up to 8 meters for a detached house and up to 6 meters for any other type of house. Then for rear extensions over 1 story, you must not exceed past the rear of the house by more than 3 meters or be within 7 meters of any of your boundaries. The roof pitch must match the existing roof, and any upper floor windows in side elevation must be obscured glass and non-opening. Alright, so that's permitted development in a nutshell. And in theory, these works don't require approval. So you'd expect to be able to just appoint a builder and get on with the works, right? Except you should always check before starting any work. For example, my brother wanted to build an extension that he believed were within his permitted development rights. But he submitted his drawings for approval anyway, and he actually got a really fast response telling him that the works that he wanted to do were in fact within the permitted development rights, or what they actually said is that they don't require full planning permission. So by doing this, he now has a letter from the local authority actually confirming it. So if he was to run into any trouble in the future, he's got that letter to fall back on. Just cracking on without any written correspondence, other than what it says on the planning portal's website, it just seems a bit too risky to me, so I think that that's a very wise thing to do. Okay, so that's permitted development, and it's a really good option if you want to speed up the process of building an extension. However, if you want to do more work than is currently allowed within the permitted development rights, then you'll have to get full planning application submitted. And I would still recommend doing this because whilst it takes quite a bit of time to prepare your planning application and get it approved, the costs associated with it are still very low compared to moving house, the costs that we looked at the start of the video. And also, you'll be increasing your property's value at the same time. Now, the normal planning permission process usually takes around 8 weeks for an approval. However, you can seek advice from a professional prior to submitting your application to give you peace of mind that what you're submitting should get approved. For example, I recently applied for planning permission to extend my house. I submitted the application on the 19th of October, and I received an email from them telling me that the expected decision date is the 14th of December, so exactly 8 weeks after submitting it. Alrighty, now let's talk about the financial side of building an extension. The main costs here are 1, your planning application fee. Number 2, architect's fees. Unless you can design and draw your own plans, and this is something that I actually did, and if you want me to make a video on that, then let me know down in the comments. You've also got your structural engineer's fees, building control throughout the actual building process, as well as getting that contractor to actually carry out the works, so the actual build costs as well. So first then, planning application fees. Here you're looking at around £206, or at least that's what I paid for my planning application, and that's assuming that there are going to be no further changes. Architect's fees can vary quite a lot, and this depends on how involved you want them to be. If you want them to be involved in your project from the start to the finish, they're going to charge between 5 and 10, usually around 7% of the overall build cost. However, for a single story extension, this isn't always necessary, and you can just use an architect to get your drawings approved and get the planning application process going. And then once you've got approval, or if you're doing it under permitted development and you're ready to go, you can just hand the drawings over to the contractor who will usually take care of things from there on. And the size and complexity of your extension will determine whether you need an architect for the whole process or just at the beginning. But on average, you're looking at around £1,500 to £2,000 for an architect for an extension. Your structural engineer that we spoke about as well is going to cost you anywhere between £800 and £1,000. And then you've got building control, the building inspectors who are going to come and inspect the build as you go. And this is going to cost between £500 and £700. And then lastly, the big one, the build cost. And this is going to vary wildly depending on 1, your location, where you live. Number 2, the size of your extension. And number 3, the quality that you want your extension to be. To give you an idea, I'm going to split this into 2 sections. One being building an extension in London and one being building one outside of London, because London is considerably more expensive. So for outside of London, you're looking at around £1,350 per square foot for an extension, whereas in London and the southeast as well, the average cost is more like £2,500 per square meter. And then if you're looking for a 2-story extension, you're looking at adding about 50% of the original extension cost on top because you've got economies of scale. So say someone was to build a 20 square meter extension outside of London, you're looking at around £30,000. And then when you add on all the other costs, the architect and the fees and the structural engineer, you're looking at around £33,000. And as I said, this varies depending on where you live. London is by far the most expensive. Anywhere outside of London is going to be quite considerably cheaper, but it will vary as well. Okay, so we've looked at the different types of extensions and how much it actually costs to build an extension. And now let's check out the impact that that has on your property's value to determine whether it's worth doing, how much you can expect to make if you do it, and maybe even if you're going to lose money by doing it. So for the costs that we just went through, I was quite generous and I included everything I could think of. So I'd like to think that those costs were fair for an average extension. Now, there are loads of websites out there that will help you calculate how much an extension will add to your property's value, but the one that I've used for this example is the ONS website. So let's jump onto my laptop and check it out. First, let's assume that we live in outside of London. I'll use Shropshire as the location here because that's where I live. So say you were to have built a 20 square meter extension, the value that is going to add to your property is £38,040, which is £1,902 per square meter. And if you remember, the average cost for building a 20 square meter extension here was £33,000. So that's a net gain in your property's value of £5,000. And because London is so different, let's check out London as well. So if you were to add a 20 square meter extension to a property in London, in Camden is the example that I'm looking at here, it would add approximately £199,000 to your property's value. That's around £10,000 per meter squared. See, I told you there's a big difference between London and not in London, and the cost to build that extension in London would be around £60,000, near enough double what it would be outside of London, and again, that's been very generous. But you're still looking at a net gain of £140,000. Now, I know this makes it look like an absolute no-brainer for anyone living in London, but to already have a property in London with a garden big enough to build a 20 square meter extension and be able to get planning permission to do so will be extremely rare. And that's why I'm basing this video on an example outside of London, because it's more realistic and more of us can relate to it. I know I certainly don't own a landed property in London with a garden big enough to build an extension, and if I did, I probably wouldn't be making this video. Alrighty guys, I hope that this video has provided you with good value and that it's helped you decide whether to build an extension or actually move into a new house is the right thing to do for you. And as I said earlier, let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a video showing you the actual program that I used to draw my own plans for my own house. I didn't need to get an architect involved, and if you want me to show exactly how you can do that and build an extension without the help of an architect, let me know in the comments. This is my third video in a property series, so make sure that you're subscribed to catch the next episodes. I'm actually thinking of releasing one property related video every week alongside my usual investment and stock videos. Alright guys, that's it from me. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.